Do you have a lot of extra herbs growing right now? Well, I bet you do, and if you're anything like me, it's really hard to keep up with using all of them. I have way more like mint and thyme and oregano than I can use or give away to my family and friends. And just like other crops in the garden, just because you don't have a use for them doesn't mean they're going to stop growing. So why not make the most out of the abundance of what you have right now so that you can use it later on when you don't have it growing? Today, you'll learn how to dry herbs for storage so that you can retain maximum flavor for the maximum amount of time. And I've been doing this for my family for a few years now, and it's been, I have to tell you, it's been so nice not having to go to the store to buy herbs. We buy in bulk, so it's like this whole thing of getting it from the container and putting it in the little plastic bags and labeling them and bringing them home, putting them into our own jars. So it's really nice to have when you need it, but growing your own dried herbs is just so fantastic, and it's so nice to have that flavor memory of the middle of spring and summer when these herbs are producing in the middle of winter when nothing is growing. It's like, oh yeah, the mint that I had growing all over my yard in summer, I can put in this lamb dish and it just makes it into something really special. Welcome to True Freedom Permaculture, where I show you all the tips and tricks you need to have a green thumb, even if you weren't born with one. Let's get started. So the best time to harvest your herbs is right before they flower. This is because that's when they contain the maximum amount of oils, and the oils is where all the flavor is at. And you also want to do this in the morning, and there's sort of a sweet spot in the morning where it's after the morning dew has dried on the leaves, because otherwise you risk spreading disease in between the leaves on the plant. But it's before full sun. The reason why is that the sun will cause some of those flavorful oils that I talked about to disappear, and that's not what you want. After you bring your herbs in, at the minimum, you want to give them a quick rinse. But if you have the time, what I like to do is to soak the herbs in a large bowl of water for like 15-20 minutes or so. The soaking just really helps to make sure that all the little, grime or bugs or whatever is on there is off, and your herbs are nice, fresh, and clean. Now with your clean herbs, you want to arrange them onto, I use paper towels. You could also use like a brown paper bag. Some people like to put out like tea towels or dish towels. Personally, I feel like the paper tends to stay drier and wick away moisture better than cloth, so that's why I'm using paper towel here. But just arrange the herbs that you have so that they're not touching and that as much air can circulate as possible around the leaves. Now for those of you who live in very humid climates, you can try running a fan and that should help a little. However, I know that there are some places where even that won't work, and you might have to use an oven or a dehydrator instead. Here's what the oregano looked like as it was drying on some paper towels. And a lot of people suggest hanging them upside down to dry, and that is a good method, but I'm not going to do that yet, and I will show you why in a second here. But I'm initially just letting them air dry. It's a couple days later, and I just wanted to show you the difference in between how much debris falls off of these herbs. Because I know that a popular method is tying them up and drying them, which I do like for some herbs, but for some herbs, I don't think it's the best idea, and I'm going to show you why. So on the right, as you know, we have our oregano, and both of these, I've been going around kind of just whenever I pass by and rearranging them so that they get some airflow, turning them over. And you can see a few leaves there, but it's nothing crazy. Let me try to zoom in here, but yeah, it's nothing too crazy. Now, on the other hand, if we go to the thyme, let's take a look at that. look at how much debris on it, and it's been there for less time because, no pun intended, but because I picked this after I picked the oregano. So that is something that I don't think would be as good for tying up in a bundle. And to be quite honest, just looking at thyme leaves and their qualities, I don't think they have as much moisture in them as, like, say, basil would or oregano would. If I'm wrong about that, someone please do correct me. But I don't think that I'm going to need to tie them up anymore to dry. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up. And I don't know about you, but I have a dog, and I haven't looked up the properties of thyme and whether or not dogs can have them or not. It might be perfectly fine and safe. But I do know that my dog will always come through. She's like a vacuum cleaner and do sort of a cleanup detail after we're in the kitchen, and whatever's on the floor is going to go in her mouth, most likely. So that's just another consideration is why I don't want to have all that debris falling on the floor. Now, if your leaves are not sufficiently dry, so they're not crunchy to the touch and you can't crumble them easily, your next step is going to be to hang them upside down. And this is going to free up your counter space. And you could start hanging them upside down right away. But the reason why I like to wait is because you can see where they're tied off with the twine, the stems are going to shrink. And so sometimes, like, the people will say that the stems fall out. I've seen people say that they use rubber bands, which is a good idea because those will shrink along with the stems. But I like to just wait. I like to make sure that they're pretty dry from the counter, so that way when I tie them up, because you notice they tend to get really close together, that I'm not going to have a lot of moisture there. So no fancy tricks about this. You just take some twine, tie the stems up, and then hang it in a place where it's going to not have a lot of direct sunlight. And you can see mine is just tied to a fruit basket that I have. Now you can check to make sure that your herbs are dry by taking a leaf off and seeing if you can crush it in between your fingers. And if when you do that it breaks into several little pieces, you know that the herbs are dry enough to store. They should crumble very easily. Also, notice what I'm doing. I'm not crushing all the leaves besides the one that I tested. I'm trying to keep them as whole and intact as possible. And that's intentional because if you keep the leaves intact, they're going to retain more of their oils and they're going to be more flavorful when you do go to use them. Because when you use them, then you can crush them up. But that's the reason why whole intact herbs are fresher than crushed, or especially like herbs that have been ground into a dust or powder. They're going to be much more flavorful if you keep them in their whole form. Herbs store best in cool, dry areas in glass jars. Once you're done filling it up, seal it off with a lid, and your herbs should be good for 8 to 12 months. Well, now you know how truly easy it is to dry your own herbs. And another thing that I like to dry are goji berries. And if that's something that interests you, you can click on the video coming up on the screen and I'll meet you over there. I'll see you soon.